A very warm welcome this Sunday to this Sunday's game, and I'm your host, Alan Moore. We're going to be speaking now in a moment about the small ball game, small ball game again, but also the smaller ball game, which we have promised. We promised when we were speaking with Maeve and Des, we would go into handball and how it's growing in Europe, because it is growing in Europe. It's stretching across the countries. It's doing very, very well. And we're going to speak with the person who is actually helping to move it in the right direction. So I'd like to welcome on making his debut here with us on this Sunday's game, Fionn O'Sullivan. Fionn, you're very, very welcome all the way from Bratislava. But you're not wearing a Slovak Shamrock shirt.
No, I'm wearing a Piebari Strakanica jersey. They're my hurling team because sadly we've just footballers here, and I'm the sole hurler, it seems, in Slovakia.
Okay, that's up to you now to change that. Okay, and of course, we'll start to push that as well from GG, because of course the more hurlers there are, the better the world is, because we need more hurlers and more camogues, and of course more handballers. Now listen, tell us, why handball, and how did you yourself get into it?
Well, handball is quite an old game in Ireland, but it hasn't really ventured out of mainly. It used to involve these big outdoor alleys that were 30 foot wide and 60 foot long, and built up to 30 foot high of concrete. So it's quite hard to get them built in everywhere. And the game in the last 40 years has kind of died away to only there's these few die-hard clubs and clubs that only just had handball going in. And I was lucky enough to grow up in Longford for my first few years near one of these clubs, Abilara and also Gowna in Cavan, where we'd just go and hit a ball against the wall for hours on end with my brothers. And then moved over to London, and luckily there's lots of walls there. And so we just continued playing.
So it's like, when we talk about trying to promote Gaelic games, we're smacking our head off the wall sometimes, but you're smacking the ball off the wall, so it does make more sense. It has taken off quite well. I mean, it's doing okay, or I don't know, it's doing well in France, also in Central East as well. Tell us a bit about the take-up in Europe, because it is growing little by little.
It is, yeah. I think the growth in France has absolutely been great. So I've done the last two Paris tournaments, and the amount of French players between the first and the second was great to see, but also the amount from different clubs who've taken it back to their own club. So I believe their plan for 2024 is to have 3 tournaments. So they have Paris, Toulouse, and soon to be Nantes joining them. In Central East, we have Bratislava, who we started up last year, and then there's Munich and Vienna, who are a bit more established in terms of time playing handball. And then next weekend, I'm in Madrid to help start their handball club. So it'll be another club in another country.
I mean, that's phenomenal. I mean, it's growing and growing, getting stronger. In terms of the local take-up, how are locals taking to it? Because we discussed before we come on air, there are native ball games. Like, so for example, if it's bowls, there's a certain type of bowls in France. So there are certain types of local handball as well.
There are, yeah. So it's Pelote in the Basque region. Then in some parts of France, Belgium, and Holland, they also have very similar games. I think it's called Katzen in Holland. And that helps. I mean, they then can come and play handball with having the prerequisite skills. In terms of the makeup of the players in the clubs, in terms of domestic players, I think the French would lead the way with that. And then it turns to, as we get more Eastern, it tends to be more international and more expat, such as here in Bratislava. But it does lead to some interesting matches. We had a match in a tournament between a South African and a Zimbabwean players of handball, which, is quite unheard of when we take it back and tell these stories back in Ireland.
Now, speaking of that, you've just come back from Dublin. You were there for the weekend. We see the photos now coming in. So what was going on in Dublin? And we see, of course, the Slovak Shamrocks here proudly across the shoulders. What was going on in Dublin? Tell me who was involved in it.
So it was, we were wanting to get more involved with GA handball on an official level, and more selfishly, for our view, be able to play in the provincials and the All Islands and then the aim is to bring trophies back to Europe. And it was just a nice way of getting to meet the key people, such as Conor MacDonald, who is the GA Handball president. So he would be on the right of that photo there. He also travelled over to Bratislava in last April in order to meet with us and help put names to faces. With David Britton, who's the national development manager, who was looking more at what our plans, targets, and aims should be in order to get this process done for both sides in a good manner, and making sure that we meet the requirements. But of course, when we heard we were going to Croke Park, we cheekily asked, could we be able to play in their fantastic new facility, which was only opened, I think, March last year. And we were invited in. We played against some of Dublin's top players, so Jonathan Westlake, Rory Lynch, Sabrina Hughes, who else? Peter O'Donnell and Owen Thine. And it was with handball being quite a small sport, everyone has mutual friends within it, and there's a nice kind of community and relaxed feel to the tournaments. But that wasn't always the case during the games. There were some very hard fought rallies and points being played.
Listen, that's the way it is. Sport, from, as you say, saying with the final whistle to the last whistle, first ball to the last ball, first serve to the last serve, that's it. It's, gloves are off, or gloves are on in your case. Fionn, also before we move away from the weekend, of course, it's been announced the Wall Ball Championship and the Nationals as well. We have this year. So tell us when is it happening and what will be happening?
So in the University of Limerick, they're going to build a large number of what we used to call one wall courts. They've rebranded Wall Handball, which is quite a mouthful, quite long to say, to Wall Ball in order to kind of build this unique sporting brand. Whereas handball, especially in Europe, does lead to some confusion between the kind of the other form of handball, which is kind of like futsal, but you can bounce it. So it's in order to kind of move it into its own unique identity. And it's kind of an international, it had to go through, of course, different organizations, because it's not just the GAA that run handball. There's several different American organizations. There's the Basque organizations. There's French and Dutch organizations. So to then get all these players come together, including with players from Japan, Australia. Last time I was out, there's players from Argentina. And it must have been about 1,000 players last time. It was held in Dublin at the City West. And basically for that week, it's just going to be handball taken over University of Limerick with players coming from all over the world to celebrate the sport.
Again, we've always seen, I've grown up with of course, Duxie Walsh and so on, these really great names. And in our club in Blanchardstown, it was all sports. So it was camogie, ladies football, hurling, Gaelic football, and of course handball as well. In terms of with the one ball, is that more advantageous to use in Europe? Because again, as you said, when people in Europe, when I say handball to people, for example, in Croatia, they think Olympic handball, because that's very popular, top professional sport, huge crowds, great prize goes into it, from France and Germany and so on. So is one ball handball, does that sort of help a little more, as well as being a mouthful? And how will that help going forward for your work and for European clubs?
It's the version of the game that we've been asked to focus on in GA Europe, because it's the easiest, because all you need is just one flat wall. Whereas the other sports, you need 3 to 4 walls and you can't use squash courts. So there's a crazy amount of expense. Whereas with the one wall handball, when we did a tournament in Bratislava, we simply taped up the lines of a sports hall, the same in Brno in Czechia. So it just makes it a lot easier in terms of the equipment used. And also it does give a better idea of the sport. Saying one wall handball does evoke a different image to just saying handball, I hope, in the heads of the people that we try to describe it in.
No, it does indeed. It definitely does. Look, just so people can understand it, so we're speaking about handball. how big is a handball? Because people sometimes mix it up with a squash ball as well and a tennis ball. So I know you have one there handy. So just if you show us on the camera, because again, as I said, people do get mixed up and they don't know what exactly it is. So what's it
Yeah,
look like? And how? There you go. So it's almost the size of a tennis ball.
yeah. It's soft rubber. So it's you normally play with. I play without gloves. Some people choose to, but it's normally just quite soft, quite bouncy as well, which keeps the games going. But there's different forms of the balls for the different codes. So this would be a one wall ball. The four wall balls tend to be a lot harder, and the 40 by 20 or small alley tends to be much smaller, much bouncy, much harder, and you have to wear goggles playing that because, of course, they're because it's more in a confined space, and just the danger of that going into your eyes isn't too appealing for me, which is why I stay to the one wall.
That makes an awful lot of sense. Look, that's great. Again, GGE has to continue pushing it forward against supporting as well, because as you said, like there's so much going on in France. Now, of course, going into Spain, of course, next week. That's terrific, and hopefully, some people up in the Nordics will see it in a couple of weeks' time in Malmo, and they can say, "Oh, wait, actually, we can actually go forward. We can take this game forward as well." Because again, it's an indoor sport. They're indoors for 9 months of the year, or well, at least 8 months of the year. So it's very, very handy, and it's good for fitness as well. Fionn, just a couple of small things before we speak about the slightly bigger ball, and that's of course hurling. What took you out to Bratislava?
I was in COVID in London, and I decided I was living in a house share, and of course wasn't a great period of time to live in a house share. So I started applying off to jobs in Eastern Europe, knowing that I'd be able to definitely afford my own place. And Bratislava there was a school here which was the first one to get back to me. So that decided the location of my job. I've been here since.
And how are you finding life in Slovakia and in Bratislava?
I'm really enjoying it. It's a small city, but you've got Vienna nearby. You've got Budapest, only a couple hours away. You've got Brno and Prague just a train away. So if you need something to do, it's very easy to get out of as well.
It's very well connected, as you said. Like, I mean, we've got the Ryanair flights that go to Dublin, which you get a bus from Bratislava to Vienna Airport direct, 1 hour, and then you're there. And again, as you said, it's such a short connection into the center of Vienna on the bus as well. It's like an hour in and out. So it is very connected. And again, as you said, it's a nice, small, comfort little city. It's got Tesco as well, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
There you go. So it has everything you need, and it has Aldi, Lidl, the whole lot. So you're sorted. You never, and the food is pretty good there as well. I do know that. On hurling, so hopefully Slovak Shamrocks will start to pick up the sticks as well. They actually did try hurling a few years ago. No, Moscow were down playing in a tournament in Bratislava, or just inside Bratislava with the Shamrocks, both Shamrocks. Why hurling, and how has it been? Because you're playing against Prague, of course, as well. So how is the uptake with hurling in the region as well?
I'd say I think Central Eastern Europe, it's definitely one area for development, is making sure that we have more hurlers coming in. I think with Bratislava, it's quite hard due to the advanced age of most of the players in the club that we tend to be into their late 30s, early 40s. So it does mean that trying to introduce another two new sports to kind of a lot of internationals can be a bit daunting. So currently I'm playing with Strakonica, which was started up by Eamon Donnelly. And he is the just so Irish person in that community in Strakonica, and he started a hurling team from scratch. I heard about the story. I figured they're one of my closest teams. I'd like to be part of that. So I've gone along. Last tournament I went to them was in Dresden, but I've travelled to Strakonica for one of their internal games, and it's great to see kind of the spirit and the uptake, because they do have quite a number of young players in the 18 to 21 bracket taking part, and they do venture over to Ireland to play in a few tournaments against clubs, which is absolutely fantastic to see.
Again, people think, okay, hurling is very difficult to pick up, but again, in your region, in Slovakia, in the Czech Republic, most of them have grown up playing ice hockey. So they kind of, it's there are transferable skills, and they do understand it as well. So it's just kind of a little bit of a step, bit of trust as well. So before we go, Fionn, one thing to ask you, because you've just landed back. So this is, again, thank you very much for the time. One small question: Where do you see the development, say, in 2 years' time? Where do you see handball being in 2 years' time in Europe, and what do you need to get it there?
I think our current flight path is that we're going to aim for any club that started up to just have an annual tournament that's on the same day every year, which makes it very easy for players then to organise if they know, which is kind of starting with the Paris tournament and Toulouse. It normally takes part in the same part of the year, so then people start to plan their year around just knowing exactly when that's going to occur. I think the big thing for us is to get a good showing to the World Handball Championships this August. And also in 2 years' time, I'd like to be able to take players from Europe to play in the Leinster Provincials and also the Irish Nationals, which would be kind of a good show to show that we are part of this GA handball community, and we're also going to take their trophies. Would be one of my dreams.
Well, listen, I think if we take a few trophies, a few medals from them, I think that's a great start. So, listen, Fionn, on that note, thank you very much. See you in Malmo quite soon, and just keep up the superb work. And just know that all GG is behind you.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Okay, folks, we will say goodbye for now. Fionn will stay on for just a moment, and of course, any more information you want, you can contact us by the site, get hold of Fionn, and find out more about handball and how you can start it up in your club as well. Because again, as he said, it's very easy to do. Get a wall in a sports hall, put tape on the wall, put tape on the ground, and play away. It's nice and easy. Men and women can play, boys and girls can play. So it's a nice, easy winter pastime, because we are coming into winter now. I know I'm feeling it today for sure. So until next time, I'll say take care of yourselves and each other. This has been Alan Moore for This Sunday's Game.